All right, welcome to the Football Friends. I'm Alex.
And I'm Charlie, and welcome to our podcast, y'all. Here we talk about football, and we're also friends, and that's in the title.
That's the most important part of it, and it's important to note that we're unique friends because I, despite my Broncos shirt, am a Steelers fan.
Yeah, and I'm a Ravens fan. As you can tell, you probably can infer from the Baltimore Orioles hat I'm wearing. So, got a lot of beef going on. We always talk smack. We watched the season finale last year together, where Tyler Lute missed his field goal, and I honestly thought the Ravens were going right to the playoffs, but it's
And they would have been dangerous in the playoffs this year.
yeah, but without I'm just glad that it eventually is allowed for both of our franchises to kind of hit the reset button, and maybe that allows us to reset this rivalry a little bit and see where the Minter and probably very shortly um short termed Mike McCarthy era in Pittsburgh.
5 years max. Yeah, I know. I think it's actually really fun that we're starting this podcast right as both teams are completely resetting, and so fitting that they both choose to completely hard reset at the same time. Ravens doing a much harder reset than the Steelers, but with much stronger foundation as well with a franchise
Yeah.
quarterback. So you guys have a much clearer, good path ahead of you, I'd say.
I mean, I'd like to hope, Jesse Minter was, in my opinion, a pretty good hire. You and I were going back and forth a lot about like who's going to get hired during that time. What's going to happen with both of these teams, and I think Minter was kind of like chalk. Like, he was with the Ravens organization for quite a long time. He had history with that Mike McDonald defense that we all know should have probably stuck around in Baltimore instead of Harbaugh for an extra 2 years, and now that he's finally here, that makes a lot of sense. As for Mike McCarthy,
Oh,
you
that
know,
would have sucked if the Ravens could have gotten McDonald as their head coach.
I mean, goodness, they could have probably won the chip by now.
Easily.
But and I was saying it back then. I gotta find receipts or something, and I'll send them to Alex, and you can put it up right on the on the on the
Yeah.
screen for y'all. But I mean, come on, guys. Like, Mike McDonald just came off the Super Bowl. We all knew he had the best defensive schemes in the book, and here we are. But hopefully Minter can replicate some of that. What's your thoughts on Mike McCarthy right now? I mean, obviously you just said 5 years max. I'm joking about it. We all know he's a Pittsburgh, native. He's obviously got a veteran experience with Aaron Rodgers, who I don't know what the current POV from Aaron is on Mike. I mean, I heard some interviews that it sounded like he was kind of decent feeling about it. He was excited to see him come back. That was a big decision and him not retiring. But then at the same time, we all know how it all ended in Green Bay for both of them. So
I appreciate you saying that because I distinctly remember Rodgers ignoring McCarthy's play calls, and that's what led to him being fired from Green Bay. And I'm like, well, that was a Rodgers at the height of his powers. Is 43-year-old Aaron Rodgers going to be like, okay, Mike, I'll listen to you this time? I don't think so. But at the same time, I do think that they seem to have a repaired relationship in some sort of way. I don't think that McCarthy or Rodgers would have came back at all if McCarthy wasn't the head coach. Like there's zero chance. And if that's what makes it feel so even weirder that the Steelers chose to hire him because they don't just hire head coaches willy-nilly. Like it's their fourth head coach since 1970. And they chose to go with somebody to obviously bring back Rodgers, while at the same time I've started to see in training camp why they brought him in. He's a quarterback guy, and we got two young quarterbacks. I personally think Drew Aller has way higher ceiling than Will Howard. Will Howard's a national champion, don't get me wrong, but he was a sixth round pick, you know? And Drew Aller was injured for the majority of his final season in college, and he was a third round pick. I think that speaks volumes about their like
well,
potentials.
you did go to Penn State. You know, I have friends who will tell me who went to Penn State that Drew Aller might be the most like bullshit, obvious, what's the right? He's kind of like he's fraudulent. Everybody loves to say he's amazing in practice but terrible in execution. What? Do you trust that as your new quarterback?
I'll say this, as someone who has so much experience with him that I have chatted back and forth with him on Canvas chat boards because we were in the same classes. I am a Drew Aller guy for those reasons, but
He helped you
I
with your
see
homework.
him. Yeah, he helped me in my French cinema class, but we were enjoying Agnes Varda's Le Bon Air together. But we also were like with James Franklin, motherfucker. Like that was holding him back. And
Very fair
I
point.
think that watching his mechanics and like you can watch him in the practice. It's not about how far he's throwing it or how quick he's throwing it. Watching just how he is throwing the ball for the Steelers, as someone who watched pretty much every snap he took for 3 years at Penn State, yeah, he looks like a way more competent quarterback. Now, yeah, how will that function in game with his mental decisions? That's a whole nother story. That's where I'm excited. Tonight's the first preseason game that either him or Will Howard will play in because Howard never took a single snap last year.
Yeah, and I mean they really do have a lot of affinity for Howard, but that was also from the Tomlin, side of things. And I think, all in all, like you can say a lot about Mike McCarthy being this quarterback guru, but you look at Jordan Love in Green Bay, and while he hasn't been able to be as successful as you'd hope, he's definitely got one of the prettiest spirals in football, and he's definitely, a very competent QB. So there's
I'm a
not many.
huge Jordan Love guy.
Yeah, and I look, I have a lot of love for Jordan Love, and no pun intended. But I think if there's any quarterback that you want, somebody like Drew Aller, who has all that raw potential that really didn't seem to be utilized and grown in at Penn State, it for you to be under Aaron Rodgers is an opportunity of a lifetime, even in that final year.
Genuinely.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, it feels like
for Will
they got.
Howard too.
Yeah, I mean, Howard gets 2 years of it, and it feels like Aller landed in the most perfect situation he could have to actually be molded from the ground up and not have anything expected of him, but to have all the opportunity in the world to succeed if he has it.
Yeah, I mean, and look, we'll see how long the Mike McCarthy era lasts for. But who's the OC in Pittsburgh now?
Brian Angelico, I think. I'll double check that.
We're so caught up, guys. We're really proving our football knowledge right here.
Oh, it's Brian Angelico,
Yeah. Who used to be
the passing game
the,
coordinator for the Vikes for the last 4 years. He's been with Cock.
which could be an interesting segue into our next topic, but
Let's do
uh,
it.
let's talk about J.J. McCarthy. Um, so people love to call him the truth, but the truth is that he is no longer the starting quarterback in Minnesota, and now it is little short round
People
Kyler
love to call
Murray.
him the truth.
It's just there was like a couple Minnesota fans I had at SCAD that tried to push that, and I thought that was absurd. I mean,
That
we
is
all
so
know he was
funny.
nothing. But if you don't know who J.J. McCarthy is, he was drafted 2 years ago out of Michigan. A lot of people said he had a lot of upside. People were really trying to convince themselves in that draft, if you remember, like that he was good, even though no one was saying that until like maybe 2 or 3 months before the draft. And
There's zero chance he actually would have been drafted high if Harbaugh didn't transition into the NFL that year. And I think that really helped him get this push that he's a national champion quarterback. His head coach is now an NFL coach, and he like swears by him. But no, he was never going to be good.
I mean, you can see that likely with Jim coming into the league, and then you go into the combine and you see him practice, and Jim is getting this really, probably personal one-on-one time with him, and all these NFL coaches who look up to Jim, and I mean, the Harbaughs is, even you could say as much as you want about John or Jim, but they're a very prolific name in the NFL, and I think if you're a coach like Kevin O'Connell, who is seeing Kirk Cousins on his way out, why not take a chance on him? But it didn't work out. He is now the number two uh, after a year of being on IR and being hurt, and then now is he got his shot. He didn't pan out. He got hurt a little bit too. Carson Wentz had to come in for a couple of games last year. And now he lost in camp pretty early on. And Alex, I mean, I'm curious, like,
Very early on.
yeah, what's your thought on him getting dumped so early by the people's head coach Kevin O'Connell?
They're clearly done with him, and I think we're seeing this more and more in the NFL. Like the Steelers with Kenny Pickett, it only took them 2 years to say, yeah, we messed up. No need to waste more time on this. They've given McCarthy a year after tearing his ACL, which is it's very hard to do that your rookie season. That's terrible that that happened to him. But I don't really see any sort of development in the way that he played last year. He played scared, he played small, and I think that O'Connell is very much so proven. And I think it's huge that they got to keep Flores as their DC. And
Who we
by
were
doing
going
that,
back going back to the Pittsburgh conversation, who we were saying could have been the head coach for Pittsburgh.
I would have absolutely taken him and been very happy with him as the defensive coordinator or the head coach. So the fact that he gets to still be their defensive coordinator, I don't think they have the time to waste on the JJ McCarthy number 9 experiment. I think that they're doing the right thing by getting Kyler Murray. And I think as long as the new COD isn't that good, they're going to get Kyler Murray for the whole season playing at a certain level.
Let's see, when does the new Call of Duty come out? We have the new one. I think is Modern Warfare. It's a remake of Modern Warfare 4, I think.
Now that's funny.
So they get him until October 23rd, and then he'll be back on Twitch. So,
Yeah, so
uh,
it depends on if McCarthy is kept on the team or not as to if he'll get a shot again. Because if so, October 23rd is time to look out for.
yeah. All jokes aside, though, before we continue the JJ McCarthy conversation, because now there's a lot of things up in the air. Kyler Murray, I liked how you said that the clock is ticking. Justin Jefferson is in his prime. They have Brian Flores for probably really only 1 or maybe 2 more years. They're doing the smart thing by basically going, here's head coach money, stay as our DC, and then whenever it's time for us to either move on from KOC if this keeps not working, or if you get a better job, go take it. But
I mean, they're
uh,
in a nightmare division, too. Like, the entire
true,
division is good.
they're with Ben Johnson, Chicago, with the Indiana Bears now. They have
Unfortunate.
unfortunate. They have obviously Green Bay, who's proven. They have Detroit with Dan Campbell, who's proven and is likely going to have a bounce back year. So a lot of, I mean, they really, other than maybe the AFC or the NFC West, are the deepest division in football, and that might not even hold truth. That might become they might be if Minnesota really can recoup this year with Kyler Murray. But
Yeah, I have looking at like projections I'd have Minnesota in last for sure in that division, but at like 10-7 or 9-8. Like I do think they're gonna be good with
yeah,
Murray as their starter.
there's a very, very good chance that if Kyler can pick himself back up, he can get off the games, and he can see above the O line, then there's a shot that Justin Jefferson will get the rock and they'll win some games. But still a lot to prove for Minnesota. Also a lot to prove for JJ. We saw a few articles coming out, after the news yesterday, as when we were recording this, of him potentially getting traded, him potentially becoming a backup behind someone somewhere, or being given the opportunity to kind of be a fringe one, depending on injury or positioning within the quarterbacks already in the room. And I guess a couple of teams that could be up for it. Let's just start right off the bat with the team that we've already been talking about the most. It's your Pittsburgh Steelers. I've seen some, in this article here. not necessarily the biggest fan of that, but you already talked a little bit about Drew Aller and Will Howard. How would you feel about J.J. McCarthy coming into that Pittsburgh quarterback room?
I think as you can hear, because I talk so much about that, I see no reason for him to come in, and I don't see any way that they would see a reason because they have to get somebody out of there. They're not going to go into the season with four quarterbacks, so they got to figure out what they're going to do with Rudolph in the first place. Because I think
Oh yeah,
he's going to get traded.
I forgot that racist Rudolph is still there.
It's completely ridiculous to me, and I definitely see him getting traded as soon as an actual starter gets hurt. It's now between him and McCarthy, probably as to who gets traded to be a starter. Because yeah, I don't see a spot for him, and definitely not McCarthy on the Steelers. Who's the Chargers backup? They'd probably take him.
So it's funny that you say that. So I'm going off of a article written a day or two ago by Christopher Knox on Bleacher Report, and Pittsburgh was the fourth team. The Chargers were the third team. I believe they still have Trey Lance there, if I'm not wrong, or is Trey Lance in Dallas?
I think Trey Lance is there. I think you're right about that. And do
Yeah, he
they?
is.
I'm
It was
trying to
fact
think
checked.
about Miami. Does Miami have a quarterback?
Miami is rocking with Malik Willis
Oh,
this
that's
season.
crazy.
They paid him a little bit of money to be the starter, who I do like, but it's probably a conversation for a different day.
No,
You know,
I forgot. As soon as you said that, they overpaid him big time. Yeah,
yeah. Also, they know that they're gonna suck. I don't think they're gonna really be trading for someone who could be like a fringe potential QB when they already have that in Malik and are probably gonna
they're
have a
gonna
high
suck.
enough
Yeah,
pick. Yeah. But as for the Chargers, I mean, I guess I can speak a little bit on it. Like, they have a very fast, high-powered offense, especially now that Mike McDaniel's in the building as their OC instead of Greg Roman. And if Slater and Joe Alt are healthy, if McConkey is fully healthy, if Hampton is fully healthy, as long as Herbert's healthy, they're going to be good. I don't know if McCarthy, even though Jim is there, is necessarily like an amazing fit, but he might end up proving to be a better backup
yeah.
than
No, I mean
another former first round pick, or even like Easton Stick might still be there. A couple other folks.
Eastern Stick. I
Yeah,
I honestly see the Chargers and the Broncos. You were saying how the AFC West is going to be the one of the tougher divisions. I see the Chargers and Broncos, whoever wins that division, coming out as the number one seed. And I do think that the Chargers are going to take a little bit of a step this year and be that good. Um, so hopefully, as long as that Herbert doesn't get injured, they don't even got to worry about it. I just see the relationship with Harbaugh getting him over there. Otherwise, looking at all these teams, you're right. Like, what are the Cardinals going to do trading for McCarthy? They know they're going to suck, just suck, rather than like wasting a fifth round pick.
and I mean they also already used a third round pick, probably egregiously so, on Carson Beck, who, if they're gonna look at any quarterback who is bad and got carried by the rest of their college team, they ought to get the guy who they already, put a pick up for. And otherwise, the Atlanta Falcons were one of the other teams. Their quarterback situation is
Yeah,
tragic.
they don't
It's
have an actual quarterback.
I believe they signed Cooper Rush last week as their QB3 because he's a lefty. I think I should know that as a Ravens fan, as Cooper Rush started 2 games for us this past year. But with Penix, who's probably just a failure of a draft pick from that Raheem Morris era, and Tua, who we already know is a failure of a draft pick from the Mike McDaniel Miami era. I think they're just trying to go all in on keeping a consistent offense from a coaching perspective. Um, and to only add J.J. McCarthy to that is probably going to bring more chaos for an unfortunately very talented, like position player room that is just going to be,
They're
given
going to be
the
terrible. They're going to
yeah
be like
they're
just as
gonna
bad as any one of these other teams we're talking about. They have Tua or Penix as their quarterback.
and Penix is going to come off of his injury, probably not 100%. Tua's
Get injured
never
again.
100%. And
Yeah.
I mean, thank God they have Bijan Robinson. Thank God they have, Drake London. And can you even say thank God for Kyle Pitts because he had one good year last year and got his money? Who knows what's going to happen next? But yeah, it's tricky. Kyle Stefanski over there, or Kevin Stefanski. Kyle, I'm thinking of Kyler. But Kevin Stefanski over there is also a very polarizing case. I think people are very 50-50 if
I
he's going to
think,
be
and
able
it's
to
funny.
get back to his early Baker Mayfield days.
I mean, he was on the Browns, but somehow by going to Atlanta, his ass is about to be exposed. Like he's there because I can't see him elevating them the way that he got Jim Schwartz and Miles Garrett to carry them to the playoffs a few times in Cleveland.
Well, they don't
They
have
have
that
nothing.
player.
Yeah, they don't. Like Bijan Robinson's the best running back in football. They'll run him until the wheels fall off. He'll probably get hurt too. And then they'll truly not win another game for the season. Like the Falcons Saints division matchups are gonna be like true dogfights, 3-6, like terrible games.
I'll play a little bit of devil's advocate because there really isn't much of a devil to advocate for there. But I think like Atlanta, New Orleans, Carolina, Tampa Bay, or that the NFC South for probably my whole life, probably since even like the early Cam Newton era, even since like other than when basically since Drew Brees retired completely, but like even then, that division has always been incredibly mediocre. And even when Drew Brees is there and healthy, they had years that some of these other teams would sneak in, on very low records. And so it's like you could Atlanta is awful, but like, what's their competition? They
Well,
play
yeah,
Tampa.
you're right.
They play Carolina, who could step up. They have Tet, they have Bryce Young, who's okay, but like, who else do they really have? And then you go into like, New Orleans, and yeah, they have Olave. They just signed Travis Achan from Jacksonville, who that's how it's
That is
pronounced
a
now
good
too.
pickup for them because who
Yeah,
knows how long Camaro is going to be going.
but they still
But
have him too.
I see it as like a two-tiered thing. Like the Falcons and Saints are down here at like 4-13 and 5-12, and Atlanta or Carolina and Tampa are like 9-8, 8-9. They'll end up winning it by default. It'll be one of those years where the team that wins it by default. I like Baker. I believe in him, so that's probably why I'll go with Tampa Bay.
I don't
But
believe in Todd Bowles though, without Liam
that's
Cohen
the issue.
now.
Yeah. And like I think you're so right about the NFC South looking back over the years because even those years where Drew Brees was great, from like
Even when Cam
2012 to
Newton was great,
2014, they would go 7-9. And then yeah, Cam Newton had his 15 in one year. Matty Ice and the Falcons had their insane year where they went to the
I
Super
mean,
Bowl.
his MVP
But
year is one of the
otherwise, they're
best.
500.
Yeah, and
Yeah, no,
every
Matty
team.
Ice's MVP season is one of the best like overall quarterback seasons I've ever seen.
Yeah, just the completion percentage and like his ability, his accuracy and quarterback rating that year was crazy. But I mean, yeah, it's just every year, all these teams, they'll either have one, maybe two, maybe 3 years of like, yeah, we're gonna be really good, and then they kind of rotate out, or there's the 1 or 2 years, which is probably more often than not, that all of the teams are at that like 10-7 to 8-9 level, and they're barely gonna sneak in. I mean, we can get into the NFC South, at some point, but it's definitely the least exciting division in football, in my opinion.
Consistently, yeah. I think it's actually the last note I'll say on that is Tampa's actually been more consistent than I think we're giving them credit for because since like 2021, I think they've been about 500 or better because Brady carried them for a few years and then they transitioned way more gracefully than I would have expected after Brady into having Baker.
Yeah, and I mean Baker has definitely been a help, but he's also been. I mean, think about last year. Like they started out that year as probably the hottest team in football, and maybe other than
Oh, he was
Indy,
the
and
MVP through week 7.
both of those teams didn't even make the postseason. And a lot of that is contributed to Baker's play. A big drop in Emeka Mbuka's play, who did get hurt the other day. Speaking of him, who might have a tricky year ahead. He has to really take over that wide receiver
Mecca
one
Egg
role.
Big Boo.
Yeah. Well, he hurt his big toe, and he sprained it, and now he can't walk. So we'll see. We'll see what they do. But I mean, like, there's a lot to be said. I guess here's a good segue. We're going to talk about some quick signings. And speaking of the NFC South, specifically Carolina, tight end Darren Waller signed in Carolina.
Oh,
This,
no way. Kenny
this,
Pickett, new target.
yup. For 1 year. He didn't do terribly. Maybe in fantasy. I don't know about actual game for Miami last year. He played a couple of games here and there. He's starting off the season fresh, which is nice. He had his whole breakup arc, Darren Waller, who went through the whole depression window because he couldn't go back to doing smack, and now he's back and trying to. This is like his third comeback at this point, but I don't know. I mean, Carolina, they definitely need more help. Their running back room is weird. Their receiver room is and that's about it. Bryce Young is also one of the few quarterbacks in the league who can't see over their own offensive line.
Yep.
What's your thoughts on Darren Waller being in Carolina? You told me to save that as a surprise for you as well.
Yeah, because like what does Darren Waller mean to me? Like anything other than a backup tight end in fantasy football. Yeah, I don't think that moves the needle at all for them, but hopefully he'll be a nice, solid, reliable target for Bryce Young. I wouldn't mind if Carolina gave Tampa a little threat for the division this year. That'd be fun.
Yeah, Darren Waller will have a great time running drag routes for the entire season and running less than 10 yards a route and hoping that he's there for the safety catch. But the other signing, which is definitely more your speed, is that Landon Roberts, who was with Pittsburgh, went back to them to be one of their linebackers this year.
Yeah, needed that, honestly. We missed him last season, and he's an underrated baller. I think he goes with Patrick Queen nicely because he needs some help. So he'll be there in the middle and clean up what gets missed. That's kind of what he did his first stint with the Steelers for 2 seasons, and it'll be nice to have him back.
Yeah, and I mean, I know PQ is just as well as you do, and you got to know that he needs support. He's not really a one. He's definitely more of like a two, definitely more of an outside back. He has a lot of speed, doesn't tackle very well. Great to get to the outside, help with that outside run game, but he's not going to be able to really stop the runner without, some added bodies. So, bring in a guy who, can be kind of a for sure help for him as somebody who knows the system, has played in Pittsburgh already. It'll definitely support Queen a bit and help him be that LB1 that he desperately wants to be.
Whole new system, though. He's got to learn the new coaching staff.
True that. No more Tomlin, and that's going to be a very different defense going forward. Last news of the day that I'd like to talk about is Deshaun Watson, the probably the most evil person that still plays in the
The
NFL,
most hated man in football, yeah.
has been given the preseason opener start by new Cleveland Browns former Ravens OC head coach Todd Monken. So,
Monken.
so Deshaun Watson getting the opening start. That's definitely, and this is not the regular season to clarify. This is the preseason opener. So this says a lot. There could be positive things, for Watson. This could be negative things for Watson. Obviously, Shador's in that locker room. They are, I mean, they're the Browns. They tend to suck, but they do have a very polarizing, fringe offense with a lot of young guys. And, the question is, do you go with the known molester, or do you go with the guy who, while is a Nepo baby, might just give you a little bit more upside? And what does this say for that quarterback battle?
I think it says a lot Honestly, it speaks volumes. The Browns is the Browns. First of all, fuck the Browns. And I think that Deshaun Watson getting named the preseason starter says, wow, okay, they think one, he needs to start. I mean, I've seen the clips of him throwing those sausages out there. They look terrible, the throws he's making in practice, those weeble wobbles.
And I know people who say Lamar can't throw a football.
Yeah, right. And so I'm looking at that and I'm like, they're choosing to put that, who he's like in his like ninth or tenth year, they're still committed to him somehow. But he's like getting old. He's been terrible the last couple years. And then you look at Shador, who probably shouldn't be an NFL quarterback, but he started so many games last year. Just benching him now is not going to do anything, especially having a whole new head coach and a whole new offense. The same goes for Dylan Gabriel, honestly. That's just putting him
Yup.
third on the depth chart. So I think the Browns are handcuffed to this problem and they're choosing to make it a bigger problem by like not ignoring it at least and benching him or just finding a way to get rid. I mean, it's the worst contract I think in sports that I've ever seen actively play out. Like usually teams are able to get away from this sort of thing. But like he's
They'll
just
even
sitting
take the
there
dead
taking the
money.
money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the worst part about it is that if you don't remember, it was a fully guaranteed deal, which was one of the most
Yeah.
absurd things that I think anyone had seen, especially with the circumstances surrounding Watson and his off the field concerns and the lawsuits and the fact that he should probably be in prison, but he isn't, and he's playing for the Cleveland Browns, which ought to be a prison, but not the
Yeah.
prison, not really a prison when you're getting paid what, like 45 million guaranteed a year. It's
It's so ridiculous.
and I mean it's a that's a whole nother conversation too. But I think you really Dylan Gabriel, weirdly enough, is probably the best quarterback in that locker room. He's also tiny. He's a lefty. I understand that he's not really your regular quarterback situation that you'd want to have, especially with two rookies as like your wide receivers 1 and 2. I know Jerry Judy's there, but they, a lot of good news about Denzel Boston, a lot of good news about KC Concepcion coming out of camp. So it's they're going to
Those
get a lot of
guys are going
play.
to be great, and they're stuck on the Browns. Yeah.
Yup. They have Harold Fanning, who had a great year last year, especially when he was playing with Shador, or when Flacco was there before he got traded to Cincy. But I think, it's just Watson. You can talk about all the off the field stuff, and I think that is by far the truest example of why he shouldn't even be playing football. But the fact that he is, I think the fact he's getting this preseason start can say one of two things, which is either that they want to see him play with these new guys, which I think would be stupid. I think he's played so many years. This guy playing in preseason says more, I think, negative than positive. But I also think, what does it say about Shador or Gabriel? It's like, are they going to get time? Or I assume, but are they going to get time with the ones, and are they going to get time with Boston and Concepcion, which are most assuredly playing in these preseason games? And I just think it's unless if they really trust, if this is really saying they trust Shador to be the one without having to play him, this probably means that unless if something really drastically shows that Watson sucks when they play this weekend, it's I feel like
I was
it's
literally just about to say, I put the dots together in my head that this essentially is them saying that Watson will be their starter, which
yeah.
basically ensures them like to be 2-15, like regardless of whenever they inevitably switch to Shador in the middle of the season. That's not setting Shador up for any sort of success because he looked terrible whenever he came in just in the middle of the season, but that's
He
partly
he
because
had
he looked lost.
he had one good game. It was the Browns.
The
They had a
Vegas game.
yup, when they had their white helmets on, and he had that one decent start that was not even like amazing, but also he was playing freaking Las Vegas, who was the worst team in
Yeah.
football last year, and Max Crosby was hurt, and they literally have nobody else on that defense to help them other than Max, and so it's I mean they're in a really bad spot. If I wouldn't blame at least like I mean, I don't think Haslam has made any good decisions, but like part of me
No.
can't blame him for maybe wanting them to suck again and want Watson to just play out this last year or two and just, get as much capital as you can. Garrett's gone now, Baker's gone, the whole era's gone. On the flip side though, Munkin, I mean, that guy, people were not expecting to get this head coach position over some other candidates, and he's not to say that he's on the hot seat, but he, is definitely
No,
close
he's
to.
already like he's the coach that's going to be there for a year or two and then get fired. Like, yeah,
He's got like Lovey Smith in Houston written all over him, or like.
completely. He's walking in with the target already on his back.
And I think for him, it's like, why don't you start Shador? Like, who cares about Watson? You know what he can do. You know what he can do off the field too, and that's not a good thing. You don't want him to be the leader of your locker room, and you have all of these rookies, and you're gonna go, or like second or third year guys who are all gonna play during the preseason, at least week one, and you're gonna go, no, let's start the guy who sucks versus the guy who sucks but at least has a ceiling.
Yeah, it's not like anyone's going to actually respect having Watson as their quarterback or their leader at all. So I agree. Like, there, as especially an offensive minded coach, it makes no sense that he wouldn't also just say, let me use the rookie that has the most potential and plays the most like Lamar. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
because Watson,
Like,
9, 10 years in, has not done anything to prove since he's gotten to Cleveland that he still has the mobility and the improvisational skills that he had in Houston.
I
And
think that Watson's body is equivalent to Aaron Rodgers at this point.
he's like 10 years younger than him, like
Yeah.
15 years younger than him. I, but I mean, it's a lot of we'll see. Cleveland plays their game on. Let's see. They will be playing on Saturday in Chicago against the Bears. So maybe with that matchup, they're trying to spare Shador from getting you know embarrassed, but at the same time, it's there's going to be a lot to see on Saturday that will tell us what the future of this Browns team is, and the clock is ticking on them truly deciding a quarterback, especially when you should probably be going into the last at least 2 weeks of the preseason before the first week, knowing who's going to be tossing you the rock when it all
You would
matters.
hope so.
So yeah, a lot of conversation about quarterback battles, changes, people being put in roles we might not love, people being put in positions that to succeed and to not succeed. But the season is young. We are only on preseason week one, and a lot can change in the next week or two. So we will find out then. But now let's get into the general season perspective. I think we wanted to maybe start with talking about who we think is going to win each division, and then give our week one predictions to cap off the show and to kind of see how we feel what all is looking like going into the year.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Let's finish strong.
Yeah. So we're gonna start. Let's start with our own tried and true division. The AFC North. Probably one of the most competitive divisions in football. Period. Definitely has some of the best rivalries you'll see in football. Obviously between our Steelers and Ravens, but Cincinnati is definitely not one to be afraid. To be to shot. I'm
No,
saying all
I
the wrong
hate
things to be
Cincinnati
afraid
just
of.
as much as I hate Baltimore.
But since he will come in and beat you, but so will Cleveland. On the AFC North is weird like that, where you'll get split matchups where a team like Baltimore, at least in the Harbaugh era, will go into Cleveland like week 4 and get blown out, and then you're all sitting there like, why the hell did they lose that game?
I completely agree. Whenever I was going through the schedule and looking at like week 4 Baltimore at Cleveland, I actually picked Cleveland to win that game because I was like, yeah, that always happens to them the same way the Steelers always they never lose in Cleveland. They have the past couple years, but they never do with Big Ben, but they always do in Cincinnati.
Yep, yep. And that's the fun of it, though. There's always parity. You never know who's really going to win that division. And between Burrow and Lamar, there are some truly great quarterbacks as well. And Aaron Rodgers, if you want to still keep him in that conversation at 43
The
years
husk,
old,
the husk of a great quarterback.
the skills. I don't know about the physical attribute, but definitely the skill.
Yeah,
Um,
so I see it as a tough division again, as always this year. Who do you see coming out on top?
I could be biased. I could say Baltimore. As much as I know you'd want to say Pittsburgh. They're probably my third team in that division this year. Cleveland will be last, but Pittsburgh is obviously going into a new era. So are the Ravens. However, I don't love Zach Taylor in Cincinnati, and as much as people are trying to really say a lot about this Cincinnati defense, which now has Dexter Lawrence, I don't think they've done a crazy amount to really upgrade there to the extent where it's going to, flip a switch. I think it's a toss-up. I think both the Cincinnati team and this Baltimore team could easily go 12 and 5. They also could easily both go 10 and 7 and still both win the division possibly at those same records. So I'm going to go with Baltimore. I know that's going to sound biased, but I think they have the easier schedule than Cincinnati. I think that their new head coach, out of all of the head coaches in the AFC North, has the most familiarity with the franchise. Other than maybe Zach Taylor, who's already been there, but I don't think he's really proven a lot that anything's going to change either. And I think that Baltimore, despite honestly probably having a weaker roster, at least if healthy, than they did, last year. I have a feeling that the coaching staff, I think if Lamar's healthy, they'll at least win 11 games.
I think that's fair. It all comes down to injuries at quarterback in this division uh, for the two best teams. I see Baltimore and Cincinnati as clearly having the best quarterbacks. Baltimore has the best overall roster. I went and did the schedule prediction, had Cleveland at 2 and 15, and then the other teams at 10 and 7, 10 and 7, 9 and 8. So very close. 9 and 8's the Bengals because if I do think a quarterback's getting injured, it's going to be Burrow, not Lamar. And they have the
Which would be
worst
such a
quarterback.
shame. Such a
Yeah, it
shame.
would because he's always hurt. And I think when healthy, he really does rival Allen, Lamar, and Mahomes. But I think Taylor's a terrible coach too because the fact that you see Burrow get injured so much, he's never once risen to the occasion. And I think because of the fact it happens so often and he never does, it's a shock they haven't fired him. But at 10 and 7 apiece, the Steelers have the division tiebreaker and I got the Steelers win the division.
Well, that was the most predictable answer that I could have gotten out of you. But I mean, so what do you
Likewise.
see? I mean, fair enough. But I mean, what do you see that you know, this is a world where these teams are healthy, and Burrow theoretically could be there and win a bunch of games, but
I'll tell you what I see that's different. I see the Steelers having a much more offensive focus with McCarthy as their head coach and being able to win games they haven't been able to win by sheer will the past couple of years. They've won games by being the team that can wear you down and force turnovers, and that's not going to be their bag anymore. And I think they're going to win more games that, you know, are the games against Lamar playing good rather than Lamar's kind of hurt and they got him to fumble and throw a couple of dumb picks, so they won.
yeah, definitely a lot more of. They're going to get into a lot more shootouts this year, and I think that also might be bad for Aaron, depending on how long he can really throw the rock deep in these games. And
Yeah. And I don't see it changing if they make the playoffs. Like once they make the playoffs, I see it being the same sort of result as the past couple of years. But 10 and 7 is about the same sort of thing as well. It depends on if Lamar is fully healthy, no, the Ravens should be 12 and 5 and just win the division.
but if he gets hurt, it's going to be the same thing as last, and as it has
Yeah,
been
and I
with the
guess
Tyler Huntley experience.
I don't fully know about Minter just yet. He's a little bit of a nerd, is the vibe I get. So we'll have to see how he shakes out.
And there's
He
there's
could be
Declan
great.
Doyle there too. I will say at least they have Anthony Weaver, who I feel like just kind of seems like a stud of an individual. But I'm really trying to fight here for my Ravens. You know what I mean?
And I think it's a very easy fight to make. If you had to give the most objective answer, I think it's much easier to make the actual argument for the Ravens over not just the Steelers, but the Bengals as well. So, yeah, the Ravens should be the team with the most talent. They fired their head coach because they need to maximize it.
Yeah.
You want to go to the
Let's
AFC South?
let's do it. So the South got Houston. Demarco is still there coaching. We have CJ Stroud still there
D'Amico.
throwing. D'Amico Ryans, not DeMarco. I'm thinking I'm getting all these names wrong. I gotta have my cheat sheet ready for next episode. But we got Tennessee, who now has Brian Dable and Robert Saleh. Dable the OC, Saleh the head coach. In the Cam Ward era with these beautiful new baby blues. The
They are
Indiana
gorgeous. Those are like it's been so rough for uniforms this off season, and those ones are great.
Yeah, I can't say anything wrong about the new Tennessee uniforms. Indianapolis, of course, running it back with the Daniel Jones experience, with the Shane Steichen experience, with JT at RB. Obviously, new receiver room. Alec Pierce is now the focal point there. And then we have Jacksonville, who Liam Cohen's second year did a great job for them this past year, where they made the playoffs. They did a great job with their running game, which got Achane some money in New Orleans, but they also had T-Law really bounce back. Parker Washington broke out. Might get some more action from Travis Hunter. Didn't see a lot from Brian Thomas Jr., but might also come back. Who knows? Their defense is solid. Tennessee is probably. I mean, where do you see it? Because I'll let you start off on
I'll
this
tell
one. I
you,
want to see your rankings.
I think that this is a much more interesting division than I grew up knowing the AFC South. The AFC South used to be, in my opinion, way worse than the NFC South. Even it was just the Colts and nobody else. And then Bill O'Brien and the Texans were the mediocre team that just won it by default and got blown out in the playoffs for a few years. Now I see it. I'm looking at this. My schedule predictions are insane. They went 11 and 6, 11 and 6, 11 and 6, and 3 and 14. And I think that's interesting because obviously the Titans are the 3 and 14. I just don't see them making that step this year. But the other three teams, arguably, is it fair to say, are on fraud watch, each and every one of them, because Houston's last game going to New England and having 5 interceptions by Stroud killed any aura from them. And then the Colts, I feel almost stupid for thinking the Colts are going to win this division, but Daniel Jones, if he comes back and plays like he did, they were fully on track and on pace to do that. And the Jaguars, I hate them. Truly, I have personal, long-standing beef with Jacksonville, but I think that they're the best overall roster in the division, maybe right there with Houston. Houston's really good on defense, but I think Jacksonville's built a great team to succeed, and they have a really good head coach. So I think it's going to be a dogfight, but I see Indianapolis coming out actually winning this one.
Okay, okay. I agree with you. This is all a major toss-up. I definitely think Tennessee's the four. I think that they probably need one more year to really, establish this new solid Dable experience. I think Cam Ward will get lucky on it. They always say third time's the charm, so the third year will probably do it for him. They have Wandale there. Carnell Tate would be going into his second year next year, so I'm excited to see the talent. I don't think it's going to be executed to its perfection yet, but they'll get there. I don't know about 3 and 14. I could see them going, maybe even winning 5 games, but it's not going to be great. But I'm with you right there
They
on.
got they got Nick Singleton in Tennessee as a running back, Penn State running back. If they let him run wild, I can see them winning 5 games.
Watch him be the James Robinson of this year in fantasy football, where you pick him up week 2 and you're like, damn,
Heard it
man.
here first. Yeah.
Yep. But I mean, really, their running back room is rough in Tennessee with Tony Pollard and what is it? What's his name? Spears. Spears is still there.
Tony
They
Spears, yeah.
yeah, so it's just been a rough couple of years for them since Henry left. But we'll see. Maybe Singleton's the truth. He definitely deserves some more playing time in Penn State if he was healthy, and we'll see if he can get that in Tennessee. As for Indy, who you say is your winner, I'd probably have him two or three. I can't 100% say for sure. I think like thing with Indy is you're so right. Like if Daniel Jones comes healthy, Steichen is on the hot seat, but he definitely is a very quality play caller. I think Jonathan Taylor is a great running back. If Alec Pierce is healthy, which he hasn't been so far in training camp, great deep ball threat. I think Josh Downs is sneaky. I think Tyler Warren could easily become tight end one in the league if they really feed him. So obviously they always tend to have a good O line. They still have Quentin Nelson there, so it's there's still a lot of upside on that offensive side of the ball. Defensively they traded for Sauce Gardner right before the Daniel Jones injury around the deadline, thinking that they were going to win the division. Obviously they didn't. They had a
That was a
terrible second
mistake.
half. Yes, they gave way too much up for Sauce. However, if he's healthy, to have that back there, they don't have Kenny Moore anymore, but uh, at least they have him. They have a couple of other pieces, but I do see Jacksonville or Houston probably taking that division. It's a toss up. I'm gonna pick Jacksonville. I think Houston definitely has the better defense. They might have the best defense in football. I think they might even have the better head coach in D'Amico. I think
I agree
Liam
with
Co-
everything you just said.
but I think Liam Cohen and his offensive prowess, I think they have a better quarterback, which is going to be a big deciding factor. If CJ Stroud can repeat his rookie year, or get anywhere close to
That's
it,
what they
then
need.
they'll win the division. But if they can't, then it's going to be Jacksonville's division to win. There's definitely some concerns with by Schul Tootin, I think is the running back in Jacksonville now, who I've never heard of before until I started doing my mock drafts about a month ago. But they have Parker Washington, they have Travis Hunter, they have BJT. Their defense is solid. It's not as good as Houston's. It might not even be as good as Indy's, but it's they can win games. They're gonna fight with
Tell
you.
you this, this is funny. I agree with you so much that I would pick Indy to win the division just based off the mock season I did. But if you ask me today who's going to win the AFC, in my Super Bowl prediction, I have it as Chicago and Jacksonville.
Really? Okay. Well, that's a crazy prediction there, but I will say I just think Jacksonville has the depth that a lot of these
I do.
other
They have a
South
really
teams don't.
sneaky depth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously Tennessee's not in this conversation, but Indy, they get hurt, and they brought back Philip Rivers last year to try and save their season. And they don't have any receiver room other than Tyler Warren if these top two guys go down. Their defense is not as good as it has been years past. Houston, it's like CJ Stroud or not, you're probably not getting great quarterback play. Your
Yeah.
running back room is led by David Montgomery, who is definitely a little rough around the edges these days. You have Nico, but you have Jaden
Gosh,
Higgins,
yeah.
I
I didn't
guess.
even
But
know
like,
Montgomery was there.
yeah, but your O line's not amazing. Your defense is freaking incredible, but I think if Trevor Lawrence is going to get into a shootout with C.J. Stroud, Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter can only, they get a couple sacks on him, but if he's throwing, and putting up 30 points, I don't think C.J. Stroud's competing with that. And
I think that's fair. And I think something you said about Philip Rivers and the Colts really clicked something into perspective for me, though. And we should move on to the AFC East after this. But I think them bringing Philip Rivers back put into perspective just how bad things went for the Colts last season towards the end. That they needed any sort of miracle, so they brought him out of retirement, and even that didn't work.
he didn't
So
even
I think
play
things are going to
terribly.
go better. No,
I,
no, he didn't. They were competitive in every game he played in, but it just wasn't meant to be last season for them. But if they can get things going this season, they were on really good pace before.
I will say though, out of any of these teams, I think if Indianapolis does not make the playoffs this year, Shane Steichen is probably coaching for another team next year.
for certain.
And that new ownership group, the Ursay's children, are going to probably reset the whole franchise from there on out.
Total make or break year for them. I agree.
Now to the East, I think this one's a little easier. It's really only between two teams.
I was gonna say we can blow through this one. Jets and Dolphins are gonna suck, and
Yeah,
then it's just who do you have between the Bills and Pats?
I'm gonna say Buffalo this year.
Me too.
I think New England had probably one of the easiest schedules in football last year. They did have a great, playoffs, but they also got very lucky that they had to play Bo Nix, or they did not have to play Bo Nix.
Yeah, they
In
wouldn't have made the
Denver
Super Bowl if they had to play Bo Nix.
in the snow. So they got very fortunate that they got where they are, but they've had obviously a lot of offseason turmoil. They traded for AJ Brown, obviously the whole Mike Vrabel situation going on there off the field. So I don't think that necessarily is going to make them bad. Obviously, AJ Brown's an upgrade over Stephon Diggs, and Drake May looks fantastic. I think Josh McDaniels should only have the position of New England OC for the rest of his life, and he should never take
For the
another
rest of
job
his life.
again. Because it seems like even if he goes to another team, head coach or not, he sucks.
Yeah,
It's something that Robert Kraft does. Maybe he sends them to some of his like sex trafficking parlors, and McDaniel's is all happy and coaches a good game. But I think,
yeah, I think that's definitely what's happening.
and I think with the Jets, they might be the worst team in football, and that's hard to say because Miami might be the worst team in football. And
I
Buffalo, I
think
mean,
they
look,
might only get their wins against each other.
genuinely, they might split and they both go 1-16, which would be awesome. But I think, Buffalo, I guess off the field related, Allen's coming off with getting his, a kid and getting married, and he's gonna be feeling it. He's coming off of a season
MVP.
where, yeah, well, I mean, no, that was 2 years ago now, because Stafford won
Yeah,
MVP
but I
last
think
year.
he's still feeling it, because
Definitely.
I don't think anyone cares about old man Stafford. I think that it's still recognized that Allen is the reigning best overall quarterback in the NFL because he carries that entire team. And I think them hiring Joe Brady as their head coach even solidifies that further.
And I mean, I think there's a lot to be said there. I don't think that Brady was the best hire, especially to go to someone who's already in McDermott's system. But to have the guy who has been leading that offense for the past, 2 years, 3 years, the guy who got Allen his MVP, I think says a lot. Says how much they want to invest in him. I mean, he is the team, and they now have DJ Moore, which will be a huge help for them in the offensive scope. Obviously, James Cook is fantastic. Their defense, leaves a little to be desired, but I think nonetheless they're in the new stadium, and they'll probably lose the 2 games they're wearing those shitty silver uniforms, and
Yeah,
maybe
for
one or
sure.
two more, three, and they'll go 12-5, and they'll be coasting into the postseason.
I have them 12-5 exactly, winning the division. I actually think New England's going to be the 8 seed, just one out of the playoffs, 10-7. Nothing wrong with them this year. Drake May's a great quarterback. It's just
Steve,
they're not going to be.
it's steep competition this year, and we're going to see
Yeah,
that the most in this next division with the West and the AFC, who the Chargers, the Broncos, the Chiefs are all potential contenders. All potentially Super Bowl contenders if the right things click.
agreed.
And
And I think I just want to shout out real quick before we really dive into breaking down those teams because it's not worth talking about Vegas that much. That I think Vegas is better than the Jets, the Dolphins, the Browns. They're right on the same field as the Titans. They're like a bad team, but they're not as bad as those other teams, in my opinion, at
I
least.
mean, they'll have Genty running the rock, so that'll be fun. They at least have
And they
Brett
have more competent
Bowers.
quarterback play.
Yeah, they have Kirk, who, as much as people like to dog on him, isn't the worst quarterback to have as your starter in the NFL these days. And also, if Mendoza starts, then great. We'll see how he plays.
I feel exactly that way. Kirko's not that bad, and as soon as he does get that bad, just pull the plug. The Raiders will pull the plug immediately on him as soon as he gets bad,
He has
and
two
then you get
consecutive.
Mendoza.
He has two consecutive bad starts, and Mendoza starting the rest of the season.
Completely.
But as for these major teams, the Chiefs are probably the biggest wild card. Obviously, they're coming off of a surprising season where they didn't even make the postseason. Mahomes was hurt by the end of the year. Their receiving room is terrible. Their running back room was terrible. Now we go back into the year. Their defense is still pretty solid. They still have, Steve Pagnuolo there, but it's a new offense with Kenneth Walker, and you'd hope with some rejuvenation from this receiver room and a healthy Mahomes. Thoughts on the Chiefs, because I do feel like they're probably both slotting in at 3 for us, but they're probably the most wild card team in the entire NFL right now.
I agree, and you nailed it exactly. They're sliding in at 3 for me. I have them extremely in the middle at 9-8. They're a total wild card. I think Mahomes is not going to be entirely healthy, but he'll play right at the beginning of the season. I think it'll take a minute for them to get their footing. And honestly, I can't believe old man Kelsey's trotting out. I'm sorry, old man Swift's trotting out there to play another season, and he's gonna just suck. And I think they'll miss the playoffs, and they'll really be left in a weird state of what do we do? We missed the playoffs back-to-back years after going to the Super Bowl for 3 years. What's going on? And like Kelsey won't want to retire. I think it'll be a really weird season for them again. Is kind of what I see coming.
I see it a little bit differently. I mean, I'll be honest. I think Kenneth Walker is good, not great. I think that he will not.
Exact feelings I feel. He's
And
not
I
going to
think,
be that big a difference.
yeah, but I do think that if they can, I think it's tricky because like it feels very reminiscent to some of like Rodgers' last few years in Green Bay, where he didn't have any receivers. Jordy Nelson was gone. Randall Cobb was like came back for like one of the last few years because they were desperate, and then they just
It
decided to
feels a
kind of.
lot like that.
And so, Travis Kelsey coming back. They're stuck with Rashee Rice and all his off the field issues. They're stuck with Xavier Worthy, who all he can do is run downfield. So they need to find some hands. And I'm kind of shocked they didn't decide to. They haven't tried to go after Tyreek Hill yet and bring him back. I think if they do get Tyreek Hill, who's still in free agency, there is a chance if he's healthy that they do go 10-7, 11-6, and sneak in as that 7 or 6 seed and make a run for it. But you are very right. Like, the Mahomes era isn't going to end until he retires. Let's be real. He's that good. And he's proven himself to be that good. But the team they have around him right now, outside of their defense, who is quite good. Their defense, I think, is very sneaky. It's tricky, and I just don't want to keep seeing. I mean, I actually kind of do because I don't want the Chiefs to keep winning. But
I don't mind it. They can keep being incompetent and building a team around him. And at the end of the day, that's what it is because Kenneth Walker got his bag after he got his Joe Flacco Super Bowl bag.
where he
And
played that
Kenneth
one
Walker
good,
will never be that good again.
yeah, that one good postseason run, and then
Yeah.
gets his
And
money.
so I see them they have no receivers. Like, dude, even Rashid Rice for all the shit he does isn't even that good. Like, so I I just don't see them being good enough because the AFC's actually done enough to make it tougher to compete in that conference. And like you said, looking at the other two divisions, the Broncos stacked. They only improved their receiver room. They got Waddle. The Chargers, they got great players out there for Herbert, and it's just they're both way more complete teams than the Chiefs.
And I agree. I do have Denver winning this division. I think that they're going to come back with a chip on their shoulder. I think they're the most complete team in the division, and I think that Sean Payton is a stud. If Bo Nix is healthy, they'll be solid at the quarterback position. They have all the weapons they need. Like you said, they got Waddle, who's probably that like final piece, that final cherry on top. They really needed to really get over the hump.
Yeah.
I think the running back position there is really the only one that I'm questionable about, with J.K. being hurt always, and you have um, what's his face? Whoever's backing him up is like good in fantasy. Oh, I already forgot it. Whatever. He's gonna be there, but that other than that, Denver's fantastic, and I think what really decides this division is Mike McDaniel, and if the Los Angeles Chargers offense can finally reach their full potential, if Justin Herbert can finally have like a genuine MVP competitive season, and they go. But I think either both of them go either way. I just think it's I think Denver just, especially with the narrative, like after getting so screwed over last year, they deserve to have their shot.
I fully agree. They're going to come back with a vengeance. It's going to be tough because they were 13-4 or 14-3 last year. Like that's really hard to replicate. They won't be that good, but I see them being like 13-4, 12-5. It's as much as the ankle actually affects Bo Nix. But I hope they come back with a full vengeance. I have both teams at 13-4. And yeah, I'm probably going to say I go with Denver winning this division and hopefully going to the Super Bowl because they should have last year.
Yeah, I agree. Um, Now let's jump into the NFC because
I
we're the
actually have
clock.
to go,
Oh,
so
okay. So we're
what
only
we'll
doing the
do is
AFC.
we'll do the AFC this episode, and then we'll do a follow-up episode right before the season starts. We can do the NFC.
All right, dope. Yeah, we've been going for a hot minute. I was thinking
Yeah,
it, but
that's good. We can do another episode and go through week one in the NFC then.
dope. All right. Well, um, that's the AFC picture from our perspective.
Yeah,
Um,
that was fun. I really enjoyed that.
yeah, man, gave me a good like. It's gonna be a lot of fun just yapping the days away because him and Alex and I can probably go on and on and on about football for however long you all want us
Football
to.
and movies, man.
Yeah, man. Wait until we get to the movie side of things.
Yeah, right? Looking forward to it.
All right, y'all. Well, thanks for tuning in to Football Friends. Um,
Yeah, right?
yeah, and
All
then
right. Well, yeah, thanks.
yeah, do your goodbye because I don't know if you ended it or not.
No, I'll end it now. Thank you for watching.